In my previous video, I talked about my work experience in ACADSOC, but I never really mentioned the downfall of it all. Well, my name is Jess, and I'm going to share to you the 5 reasons why I left ACADSOC. In this video, I'm going to talk about 2 things. The first one are the 5 reasons why I left. The second one is what happened after leaving the company, because something still happened. So, what are my 5 reasons for leaving the company? The first one is my TM. I mentioned in my previous video that I had 3 TMs when I worked in ACADSOC, but the worst was actually my second TM. The reason for that is because even though she was responsive, she only responds to her concern and not to my concerns. And the main concern that I had was I wanted to be moved back to just being a regular teacher instead of a top tutor. However, she refused and even came to the point of lying by saying that I was permanently a top tutor. But I knew that was a lie because I asked other teachers about their experience being a top tutor and then moving back to being a regular teacher. And from what they said, they requested the TM to move them back. And then they were moved. So the thought that she would lie and not even consider my situation during that time, which I will mention later, was really demotivating. Now, the second reason is because I was a top tutor in the company. So if you're wondering why is it so bad to be a top tutor, it's actually not. It's just that for part-timers, you have a big disadvantage. The disadvantage is most of your schedule will be dedicated to trial classes. If you know, trial classes aren't really guaranteed. Not every day you will be booked by trials. So it's just luck, luck, and luck. So if you are being promoted by your TM quite often, then the possibility of getting a trial is bigger. However, if you're not being promoted by your TM, the sales management, then you won't get promoted. And in my case, half of my schedule was for trial and half of my schedule was for regulars. The regulars were set for afternoon classes and then the trials were set for evening classes most of the time. My TM even offered me to move my schedule to morning and evening. However, I refused because I don't like the idea of doing morning classes and then evening classes. It sounds like a bit of a conflict for my personal schedule. So, what happened was when I made this decision of refusing the morning classes, all of a sudden I wasn't getting the regular classes that I had before. And from what I heard, TMs have that power of hiding or showing your profile to other students. I'm not sure if it's true, but that's what I heard from other teachers. The top tutor position had its advantages as well. You get the enrollment bonuses, the possibility of having regular students. However, again, in my case, you will lose a lot of things if you are a top tutor as a part-timer. And for me, it demands a lot, especially when it comes to schedule, which for part timers is really hard to adjust. And then my third reason was with my schedule and booking rate. Now, in my previous video, I didn't mention the flexibility of the schedule in the company. That's because it still depends on your TM. For my previous TM, she didn't really demand much, but with my second TM, it got really complicated. So schedules really depend on your TM. Although you can do part time, you can do full time, it still depends on what the TM wants you to have. With my first TM, my schedule was 8 hours a day and always fully booked. But with my second TM, I had 6 hours a day and I barely got any bookings. The reason for that is because my TM again moved me to being a top tutor, my schedule being divided into two trials and regulars. I barely got any trials. My regulars couldn't find me, which I know is true because most of them requested for me to open more slots. But because I was too busy with my personal life and my TM trying to hide my profile, it was impossible because the 2 weeks before I quit my job, I was working for 8 hours a day and I could still barely get any regulars and trials. So even with my last month with the company, I still gave them the chance that maybe it is my fault because I'm a part-time as a top tutor. So what I did was for the last 2 to 3 weeks, I was working full time with the company, uh, and I still didn't progress. I wasn't getting any bookings. My regulars, they still couldn't see me, and I wasn't even getting any trials. So out of the 8 hour schedule that I had, I was only getting 2 to 4 trial classes and 2 to 3 regulars per day. And with all the empty slots that you see every single day, it's really, really demotivating to work. The fourth reason is actually the most painful thing for me, my salary. So as you can see, I barely got any bookings, which means that I barely got any income. And for the past few months of working with the company, probably for 5 months, yes, 5 months, I was only receiving around 2 to 3 thousand per cutoff. Imagine that. In my previous video, I mentioned I was receiving 9 to 10. That was because I was with my first TM. But with my second TM, with all these inconveniences that happened to me, my highest was around $4 to $5,000 per cutoff. And then my lowest was around 2,000. So if you keep receiving that kind of amount every cutoff while you are trying your best to meet the requirements your position demand, it's not right. It really isn't because it feels like you're just a slave. Sorry for the word, but it really is like that because you're trying to give as much as you can and barely receiving anything in return. So that was my kind of like my turning point because I know I deserved more than just 2,000 every cutoff. The fifth and last reason is because of the penalty. Now, when I started teaching in ACADSOC with my first TM, now the penalty wasn't really that high. Like you lose only a couple of pesos per class, but now it's around 3 times your hourly rate per class. So if you cancel around one class, it's an equivalent to 3 hours of your working or teaching time. And it's really hard, especially if the TM isn't considerate enough. And sometimes it's not even about the cancellation. Sometimes it's even about complaints. Student complaints, staff complaints. So even though you tried your best to do all of the things that you need to do with the company, if someone from the company, like the staff or the student complains, you will still receive the penalty because you can't do anything. That actually happened to me. The staff complained that there was an internet connection delay in my end, but when I checked my site, it was good. And then I found out that it was actually from the students' end. Even though knowing that fact, they still put the blame on me and gave me this huge penalty, which really, really demotivated me because aside from the salary that you barely have, you're getting this penalty that you know you didn't even deserve. So aside from that experience that I had, what happened after was quite interesting because I informed my second TM that I wanted to leave. I don't want to be in this situation anymore. At first, she did refuse because I wasn't giving any valid reason. So after like a week or so, I said that I'm quitting again because I'm moving to province, which means that my internet connection wouldn't be that great anymore. And then she had no choice but to say yes. And then on my last day of working in the company, I was suddenly introduced to another TM, and it was confusing because I asked her or him if she knew my situation, which was it was actually my last day, and they said no. So I had to explain it over and over again to this person because they don't want me to quit. They kept on saying that, why would you quit? You're a top tutor. You're getting all these enrollments. You have regulars and all these things. And I just simply said that I don't want this anymore. And that because I was moving to province and she didn't really have any choice but to let me go. So before the last 2 days of working in ACADSOC was actually the day of releasing of salary. So imagine that I'll be receiving my next salary with only 2 days of working. I was already expecting that it was going to be low, but I still expected that money because it was still money that I worked for. So I messaged my TM, my third TM, I'll still receive it. And they didn't really answer me. But I was still hoping that they would give me my last salary because I didn't really have any conflicts with them. I tried my best to avoid cancellations, to attend all my classes, and give my goodbyes and ask for my certificate of employment. So I was expecting my last pay, even though it was only 200 pesos. It was still money that I worked for. So I really tried my best to leave the company with a clean heart by saying goodbye to my students, attending all my classes. I really did try my best not to disappoint my students. And then when salary day came, I didn't receive my salary, which was kind of expected, but I was thinking, why didn't I receive? What happened? So when I logged in, it was still active actually. I was shocked when I saw that I had a penalty around 1,000 pesos, and I was confused. Like, I did everything. I tried my best to attend, to not cancel most of my classes. So what happened? And then I realized when I checked my booking schedules that they plotted 2 days of schedule that I couldn't attend to because I wasn't aware. So I saw that most of my regulars actually booked those classes. So just the thought that the company plotted 2 days of schedules without me knowing it, and then my students booking those classes, and then the company letting the students wait for me and reporting that I was absent really angered me because they did all of this just so I don't receive my salary. I wasn't even expecting much from the salary, but just the thought that my students now think that I had a bad image because of leaving them hanging. It was really, really, really so disappointing for the company to do something like that. So even though I really tried my best to leave the company peacefully, I was still really disappointed with what they did, but I try my best to look at this as a milestone for me to move forward to a new and better company that I believe will take care of me. So, those were my reasons for leaving the company. I know it's not really that interesting compared to other teachers who shared their stories, but I do think that it's still a valid reason to leave the company. So, if you are interested to know more about ESL companies that you want to apply to, uh, ESL tips that you want to know, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel because I'll be posting more of those in the future. So thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully you liked it. I'll see you next time.